Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. This is our first time having a town hall this semester. It's great to see everybody. And to those who are coming in via Zoom that we aren't seeing, we're glad to have you here as well. And today, President Schatzel is visiting with us. It's our great pleasure. And so I'll let President Schatzel make a few opening remarks, and then we'll take questions from people who are in the room and zooming in. And if you want to put questions, is it in the chat? In the chat, right? Q&A. We'll also address those. And then if we have gone through all of those, we'll go to the questions that were submitted in advance. So President Schatzel.
Okay, Chris. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's interesting. I've been reflecting with colleagues of mine that we're coming up on 2 years since we had the stay-at-home order for Governor Hogan. And it seems like a long time ago that it kind of happened and how much has really changed. One of the things that's really interesting about it is the fact that when we first had the stay-at-home order, the week after that, because we all didn't know how long it would last and kind of what it was. And the very first meeting we had with the USM, so it was all 11 universities, the 3 regional centers, the USM staff, we had a conference call because that was before Zoom. And there were 160 people on the conference call itself. So for the first 15 minutes, there were dogs barking and children yelling and television sets in the background and being told mute, 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 mute. And at the time when I got off of it, I thought, I don't know how we're going to do this. Because it was just so, like, how are we going to talk to each other? How are we going to organize things? And then magically we figured out Zoom too. So there was ways to be able to introduce tools. And now we make use of it in some really interesting ways as well. But I appreciate the opportunity to come say hi. Right now, the biggest thing that's on my docket is that we're going to be testifying before the legislature in about 2 weeks. So I'm spending a lot of time talking to the legislators and the electeds in terms of Annapolis. We had the operating budget. There's about a 10% cut in the operating budget during 21-22. And now that's been restored in the new operating budget. So we're pleased that the governor was supportive of that. We don't think in the legislative DLS, which is Department of Legislative Services, supportive of the governor's budgets. We don't anticipate that either the General Assembly, any part of it would do anything in terms of the budget itself. So that's the good news. We're also very pleased with the fact that there were merit COLA as well as bonuses that were included that we were able to have. Our university probably applied them the broadest of all of the universities in terms of including student workers as well as adjuncts. Some of the other universities did not do that. We took the position that we wanted to, basically apply it to everyone who was our colleague to be able to demonstrate the fact that they do contribute to the success of the university as well as the students. So we were pleased to be able to do that. And then we're waiting for the capital. I'll be testifying for capital as well. And in that we have pre-approved for all the college health professions. So that's continuing to be able to do that. And then planning money for Smith Hall to be able to start that in 2 years. So we'll start the construction there. That's a difficult site to be able to use. So we really had to figure out how to do that and not mess up the trees. So it was important to be able to do that. So those are the 2 main pieces to it. And then we'll be completing the union. The union will be completed next year. So that's most of the time where I spend my time right now, particularly when they're in session, is to make sure the fact that that our needs and our wants are covered in terms of the legislature to be able to manage that. What I want to do is stop because I really want to spend most of the time answering questions that folks might have and not talk so much from my perspective. It's really about understanding what I can do to be able to answer your questions. So I'll stop there and see if there's questions here.
Who wants to be the first? I know that's the hard way.
I'll go. Okay. So 2 weeks from today, our Towson University Baltimore County Public Schools Model UN is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Kept going through the pandemic and everything. There are questions regarding masking. This is, of course, bringing in, almost 300 high schoolers. So in my discussions with Baltimore County, regardless of, we were thinking that we're going to be a mask-on event, that was the safest way to go. But that raises some questions about outside partners coming in for events. And I don't know where we are in terms of the discussions on masking. As I said, we plan to be a fully mask-on event because I don't know about y'all with 300 high schoolers. I want my mask on.
So, we've not changed the mandate in terms of masks. We're taking a look at all of the changes that are happening across the state, as well as the CDC, as well as Baltimore County Public Schools. So we're talking to medical experts as well as 2MAC. So we're gathering all of that information as we go along. But wear a mask on campus. Probably what we will see is the first, in the email, we talked about step down approach. Probably the first step down that we're being advised that I would expect that we might consider first, and we haven't made a decision, but what I would say would be to go from twice a week testing in terms of sentinel testing to maybe once a week testing, to be able to open up outside groups, to be able to come to campus, to be able to start planning for camps in the summertime. That I would expect would be kind of the first ice breaking that we would see in terms of some of the changes over the next week or so, to be able to start considering those.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just wondering if there are any updates on the investigations and the shooting in the fall semester on the recent homicide just off campus of one of our students.
So with regard to the shooting on campus itself, that is still under investigation. There was an individual that was arrested, but the charges were changed to a different type of charge. It was possession, I believe, versus the shooting itself. And then what was the other one?
The homicide at the Altus Apartments. I live nearby, so I'm kind of,
Yeah.
it's a neighbor, as a neighbor of campus, I'm curious too.
So the one thing that I can tell you is the fact that in that event there, as well as the altercation that was outside the rec room, that those were, and this is what law enforcement calls them, that they were not random, they were targeted events, which means that the individuals knew each other or were interacting with each other. And that doesn't make me feel any better, or you feel any better, but that's kind of what it is. What we've done in terms of doing that is supporting Baltimore County. Baltimore County is doing the investigation for it. And we've also provided a grant where in the evening hours, there's 2 to 3 Baltimore County police officers that are actually patrolling the dense area in terms of the core itself to be able to up that. County executive has been, he's very thankful that we were able to do that, but we thought it was important to be able to step into that space and be able to provide that extra support. Sorry, I can't offer more, but like I said, they're conducting the investigation. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Schitzel. I have a question about parking and electric vehicle parking. I know that they've added a lot, but it seems like it's getting harder to get a plug-in especially in Towson Town. Do you know if they have plans to add more plugins anytime soon?
So I can tell you that tomorrow I'm picking up a plug-in hybrid. So
Nice.
my interest level goes up as well to be able to do that. We're actually taking a look at that in terms of, this is the first time our strategic plan has really called out sustainability. So to be able to have a plan to go to address issues in terms of the plug-in, as well as to be able to see various areas we can reduce our carbon footprint. We've done a really good job in terms of, it's about a 40% decline in the last, I think it's maybe 8 or 9 years, but it's always that last part that goes down. But I'll go back and ask about the plug-in stations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I sure will. I'm excited to get my car.
You'll love.
Okay.
What kind of car? I'm curious.
It's a Hyundai plug-in hybrid. So they're really hard to get. It was like, I said, can I have this color? They're like, forget it. You're just gonna get what you get. So I was like, okay.
So I asked a similar question at RPAC about this, but because of our forensics department, I have to ask another question about Smith Hall. I know that it's going to be a mixed use space, but given that I've just been asked to get a fish tank for decomposition and I have nowhere to put it, is there any way that we can kind of figure out what type of mixed use space, or if there are ways to put in proposals, because with this, it requires a negative pressure burn, which I don't have right now.
So the person that's best to ask about this is Matt Chambers. He's basically, he's the one that provides the interface between the provost's office and facilities to be able to do that. So I would ask him. And I know we have it laid out in terms of the facilities itself. It's not totally nailed down, but we have the spacing laid out in terms of what's going to be used by what's, but I think asking him is probably the best next step.
Other questions? Are any questions coming in?
There are
From-
none in the Q
From
and
the
A.
Zoom? Okay, any other questions? Oh, here, Awesome.
I always have more questions, sorry. So you mentioned that you're going to the legislature, and so I was wondering what sort of challenges and opportunities you see for us now, when you go there, and in the next coming academic year. And of course, we have a lot of things going on, but again, challenges and opportunities that you see.
So one of the things that we're doing this as a system is to really start talking to the legislators about the fact that, and this year's been particularly difficult because there's been a changeover of a lot of the committee heads and a lot of legislators that have been introduced. So they have a lot of bills. Everybody likes to introduce a lot of bills. And if you add up all the bills that affect higher ed, individually, they might not look like a lot. But if you put them all together, particularly in terms of reporting, what we have to report, how we have to report it, you know, things like that, it can be, it places quite a demand on us from an administrative standpoint. And we talked about unfunded mandates, because to be able to provide and we want to do it, but it's kind of like, do you understand everything that you're asking? So we're really spending a lot of time educating them to that. Probably the other area that we're spending a lot of time is graduate students, in terms of thinking what might happen with graduate students. We all feel very strongly the fact that graduate students are students first, they're not employees first. So to be able to work with them that way, but having, you know, that's something that is a trend nationally right now in terms of discussions with graduate students as well. And, you know, I would say that those are the two key issues that we're really taking a look at. We're spending a lot of time talking to them about mental health, behavioral health on the campus. And again, that's not funded. Okay, so we do it with, you know, we do it in terms of student fees. So there's no funding for the state with regard to that. It's only for academic buildings and academic programming, but not for behavioral health. So we're doing a lot of work educating to that. And they're very receptive at this point in terms of being able to consider that as well. So we're cautiously optimistic, the fact that we can start taking a look at additional funding moving into that area.
So okay, go ahead.
And I also have one.
Okay.
You first.
Oh, okay. So I'm wondering, do you have any updates regarding, you know, TU's transition to the R2 institution? For example, is there any plan for hiring more faculty members or creating more graduate student programs like that?
Yes.
I'm actually going to address that, you know, in my part of the town.
So there's a large proposal that details graduate students, details hiring, details 9-month contracts, details load reduction in terms of being able to do that. And I know that the deans have been working with the provost on that. I recently approved in terms of new hires for the fall, as well as GAs, as well as increase in graduate stipends to make us more competitive. So it's a long conversation that I know that the dean is in a much better position to be able to respond to the impact on CLA.
We'll talk about it in a few moments as well. Yeah.
The question that came in from our Zoom watchers, that's probably going to segue to what Chris has to say, is that what is the likelihood, it's back to the masking, and the question is a little more specific, what's the likelihood that we'll move to a mask optional this semester?
I would say that it's, you know, I don't like to speculate. It's never productive to speculate. I would say that we need to be able to just watch the trends, and that's what we're trying to do nationally. The CDC is supposed to come out with updated guidance. I think it's next week. We're going to be watching that very carefully, and we're going to be watching very carefully Baltimore County Public Schools, because of the fact that around, I think it's the 25th, is when it looks like there might be a change there. So we'll take all that information in, and we're working with TUMAC, which is the medical advisory group as well, and the system. So, I don't like speculating in terms of probabilities, but we're watching all of those indicators to be able to.
I want to read one of the questions we received. We received masking questions. I think we've covered some of that here. And this is about student performance that I've heard about. I know many of you have experienced. And it says, I've noticed that first-year students in my fall classes did worse than in previous years. Many of these students are on academic probation. It's probably related to the pandemic. Is this significant across the colleges, and what kinds of steps are being taken to address this problem?
So I don't know if you have the data for your college, Chris, but I can tell you, I actually talked to the provost about this about an hour ago. And the data does not support the fact that this is a university-wide change. So in terms of academic probation and retention, as well as we're not seeing that university-wide by department, there could be some shifts there to be able to take a look at it. You have the data for the college, so you can probably respond to that at the college level.
We looked at TSEMs because that's really important. We looked back a few years, and also at English 102, back a few years. There is very slight change, very slight increase. And with English, with TSEMs, it was very low. It was maybe 10, 15 students college-wide. In terms of, and I'm not saying there's nothing to be concerned about there, but it's not, very, very large problem. English 102 is slightly larger than that, but we're still not talking maybe about 50 students difference. So there are some interventions. The Writing Center has, emailed students in those categories to provide additional support, and then they're hiring more tutors to provide support, because it isn't just those courses, but I've heard from a lot of faculty that they're concerned about writing skills especially, but not. And so that's how we're starting to address it.
So I've actually talked to some colleagues, and there's it's going to be interesting in terms of the work that's done to be able to take a look at the change in terms of learning. Because we have 2 years of online learning to be able to come on, and that we've changed pedagogies at the high school level to be able to accommodate that in a different way. And now, and even with our students, we changed things, and now they're kind of back into the classroom again. I've heard faculty talk about the fact that students were very used to having like open book exams, so that they were able to find the information and put it together. And now when they're being asked to sit down and to be able to synthesize much more than maybe last year, that they're struggling with those types of critical skills. So really taking a look at it from a learning standpoint and what pedagogy would fit with it is really, it's something that we're, to look at is going to be interesting, but we have not seen and again, the dean's point is well taken. If it's one more student, it's a critical thing to look at, but we haven't seen a large scale or even a significant shift in terms of the university-wide.
So I don't know if you have time for one more question.
I do.
Is there another question inside the room, outside the room?
There's an inside the room. Yes.
I just want to kind of follow up on that. I think another thing that we're seeing inside the classroom that impacts inside the classroom, one thing is time management skills, problems with time management. And the other thing is that students were used to going to class online and multitasking. And so then they're coming into class in the classroom and trying to still multitask like they're on Zoom. And us having to be like, no, you have to put your phone away. No, you can't be doing this. And so I think we're kind of feeling like K through 12 teachers in that respect of having to go back and work on
cabinet. So it's okay. I did. Yeah. The first time we had an in-person meeting, I was like, I want everyone to put your iPads down.
Yeah.
And look at each other. Okay,
Yeah.
somebody's talking.
Yeah.
And we all were guilty of it.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying any of us were immune to that, myself included. But so, I mean, just wondering if there are other options that we might be able to encourage some of these for the next semester, the next incoming freshmen about how to behave in class.
That's interesting in terms of like an onboarding. to be able
Yes,
to do that.
yes.
I'll carry that back.
Yeah.
Because that could be a really interesting way to be able to take a look at onboarding. And because we do that, but to be more intentional about classroom is important as well. So I'll bring that back. Thank you.
Wow. Anything else for the president? Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Well, it's
to meet
my,
with us.
it's a gift to me. So, I appreciate coming over and being able to spend time with everybody that's also on Zoom as well. And I always want to say, of course, thank you to each and every one of you for supporting our colleagues during these challenging times, as well as going ahead, as well as supporting the success of our students. Being at a university has been important to so many of them in terms of being able to see the fact that their future is continuing and to be able to see that progress. So we give hope and light to people. Don't forget that. So it's important. So thank you, everyone. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
And don't blow away.
Enjoy your car.
I will.
All right, well, welcome again. I'm gonna, you the camera?
You are.
All right, so I think I'm gonna follow the president's example and stand here. How does that sound? And everyone can hear out there, right? All right, good. So it's great to see you, and it's great to hear your questions for the president. I think I want to address a few, follow up on a few, and then we'll continue what I intended to speak about. So actually, this is a good segue into what I want to start with. In terms of R2 and investment, yes, the president is right. The deans, if you recall, spent the fall semester putting together, we worked regularly. We met regularly every week, sometimes more, put together a complex and comprehensive plan, which was to first, try to map out more at a higher level, but with some specifics, how we are going to transition to this R2 over a period of time. It's not going to happen in 1 year, but it can't be something we say, well, 10 years we'll be there, but I don't know exactly how we get there. No, we were very intentional and very specific. That includes initial investment over the next 3 years. It's a significant financial investment the president committed to. And so part of that investment is over the next 2 years, we will, as a university, I don't know how many will come to the college. We're in that process right now, but we will see an increase of new lines to help us get to R2 of approximately 60 faculty overall. These are new. These are not replacing people who have left. They're not replacing vacant positions. And you've heard this before, at least in maybe an even more general way from the president and provost. The president approves that plan. Right now, the chairs are putting together their proposals, give to me, and I prioritize them. And then the provost talks with the deans, and what will be funded for next year, what we can actually search starting end of summer, beginning of fall semester. But that's significant. Another piece of that, which didn't come so much from deans, but it is happening, and you know about it, it is the switch to a 9-month contract. It's a little bit in steps. That means all tenure track and tenured faculty will move to the 9-month contract starting next academic year. Lectures are on a slightly different calendar, but by fall of 23, all full-time faculty will be on that contract. So another thing to think about is, or that's part of this plan, is what does it actually take to create an R2 university? So in terms of hiring, all the colleges this year intentionally hired or are looking to hire faculty who will commit to a different kind of research program and where possible, commit to seeking grants. Because if you become an R2 university, we need to check several boxes. One of them is the amount of money the university spends on research itself, amount of grants we bring in, and then not so much the programs, but graduates from those programs. We need a minimum of 20 PhDs or research doctorates every year. We are aiming for a higher number than that. 30 would be great, because as you know, student progress varies, especially at the doctoral level. So we may have enough students in the pipeline, but we may not hit that 20 in 1 year. So we're not shooting for 20, we're aspiring to, around 30. And it could be higher, it's fine. But we're not just going to, shoot for the minimum. The research investment in the colleges will vary, but we are already given a significant number mostly starting in next. One large piece of that was a significant increase in conference travel. I haven't had time to work through that, but we all know that conference travel money is too low for people who go to present at conferences. So I'm looking at a couple of different models of how we might actually take the opportunity to do things a little bit differently. And I'll talk more about that at another town hall. I had asked for money to incentivize faculty who submit grants. Okay, big grants, it has to be a certain amount, dollar amount. We know that if you're new at grant writing, and if you're not, you know this very well, usually the first attempt to get that big grant is not consistent. But you need time to work on it. So it's not that we're going to connect the course release to grant. We're going to connect the course release to writing that first grant, right? Or writing a new grant if you've written them before and been successful or not. That requires some support inside and outside the college, but one form of support is to give course release from the semester they can work on, or maybe some summer money. It can be in different ways. So we got that money, and then there's another small pot of money. Those are smaller pots of money to also incentivize faculty. Some of that, a very small portion of the incentive, not conference travel, comes to us right now. And that means we were just told about it. We can't use it for course releases because the semester is gone. So I have to think, how am I going to use this money? And it might be more for summer stipend, but I have some inquiries to make and thoughts about that. Right now, and you can ask questions when I'm done with us. I hope you do. As I said, we're undergoing searches. We have 6 searches that were approved for this academic year in the college. One of them, I'm very happy to say, is already concluded, and the offer was accepted. So that's fantastic news. The pools were extremely strong. Those of you who are in departments that are searching hopefully agree. I had one group saying, oh, they're not that strong, and then they gave me the finalists, and I thought, these are great. So, it might be a matter of perspective, I'm not sure. But each group of finalists had what we were looking for. They had an active research program, a future research program. In some cases, they've already gotten grants. So we know that they know how to do it, and we know how the process works. So there's a lot of promise in this group. And I think that's something for us to look forward to. It's been a lot of work. So all the committees that are working on this, I'm very happy about that. And if we're doing 6 searches this year, in the past you've done more. So think about what that looks like. That means that many more, people will be involved, many more people coming through the halls, our offices, and so forth. It's exciting, but it's a lot of work, right? We have to admit that. While we're talking about searches, we're in the final phase, meaning we're going to start bringing finalists to campus for the college academic advisor position, and Karen Esco is leading that search, so that's a good thing too. So in some time, right, not too far off in the future, we're hoping that we'll have that person on board, and you get to know whoever that is in the building. So that's good news too. Part of this transition to R2, and part of the reason we need more faculty is not just because of what I've said, but they will help us to get to the 3-3 load. Okay, without additional faculty, it's going to be impossible to do. So it's not just that we're hiring people with specific profiles; they also have to be able to teach. They have to spend time with our students. And so, keep that in mind when we talk about faculty hiring. It's not just because they can make grants, be successful, have an active research work, but they're actually going to teach 6 classes for us, okay, every year. Couple of other updates. Good news, I think. If you walked around the building, you may have noticed we have a brand new student collaborative space that's ready to go. It's 3100 C, so if you have a chance, if you haven't seen it, go by it after the town hall and see what it looks like. I think Teresa,
All of the faculty members,
Faculty.
you have swipe card
Yeah.
access to get into the building right now, don't tell anyone. You guys can swipe to get the 3100 C, but it's not for you guys to have meetings. And it's
right, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. So, I mean, you can access it. So if you afterwards want to open the door, if no one's in there, you can do it with your card. So the idea is that students, it's primarily for student use. It's a student collaborative space. So I don't want department meetings in there. I don't want committee meetings in there. That's not how we have that open. Thesis, defenses, or presentations. But I have now read the files, comprehensive review files, or promotion and tenure files for about half of our full-time faculty. And what I noticed is how much active learning is going on in the classes through group projects that have to be done outside. There should be demand for that room. So, encourage your students to go and use that room. Has nice facilities, great view, has technology, technology and other things. So comfortable space. We don't want it to be empty. If we see that the room is really used in this semester alone, we'll work out introducing another collaborative student space. May take a little longer than the semester to determine that, but hopefully we'll see how used right now. I want to just give you a few updates about things you've heard about before, and some of these I'll put in my dean's office tips, which I'll put out by Monday and start the spring semester series. The Democracy Today initiative. You've heard me talk about that in the fall semester. Let's see, is anyone here? I can't see on Zoom, so I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. Is anyone here on Democracy Today? A couple of people I see already, yeah. And yes, I'm sorry, 3 people, and there might be more on Zoom. I'll list all of their names in the these office tips, but in any case, they worked very hard in the fall semester to put together readings. If you remember, I said that we're going to do college-wide readings, optional, voluntary, and very active group, very thoughtful group, often telling me, no, it's not going to work. We have to do it another way, and we went that other way. So what we've come up with is we have 4 readings around 4 themes that the group feels is important to how we think and talk about democracy. And we're going to have actually 3 meetings. That means we will have only individual meetings for these groups. 1 meeting in the semester, 1 each month. We'll talk about the readings that were gathered around those themes. We have 4 themes, 3 meetings. That means the last 2 themes actually turned out to be more similar than we thought originally, so we're combining them. But we still have 4 themes. The other thing I want to update you on is commemorative moments calendar. That's a smaller group that I selected myself. The other one, departments recommended members. The commemorative moments calendar grew out of something that I noticed or observed last year. Someone came to me and asked me, as someone came to the dean's office a couple of weeks ago and asked the same question, what do you have going on for Black History Month? I put a query out to the chairs. First I got silence, then I got nervous. To me, it was, I couldn't understand. I mean, nothing is going on. Plenty was going on, but people weren't coordinating or thinking about it. Same with Women's History Month and other important moments. So this small group of people helped put together a calendar. It doesn't include July and beginning of August, maybe none of August, but about 10 months a year of important moments. Some of them are individual dates. Some of them are thematic months, weeks in the month, and at least 1 or 2 have to do with special anniversaries. I believe it's the 100 and someone will know this better than me, 50th birthday, anniversary of the birthday of Harriet Tubman, I believe. So that's not gonna happen every year, but things like that can be put in on an annual basis. And the idea for this and the Democracy Today initiative is that I want to provide more opportunities for us to work together, to collaborate, to think beyond our disciplines and think not so much as a college, that's important, but to really consider who here outside of your department might be working on something that you might want. Maybe you want to join together and create a class or study abroad or study away course. Or hopefully you might find someone to do research together with. Maybe it results in a publication, maybe a grant. Like I said, I've gone through half of the files in great detail, and I'm seeing similar projects, not the same, but topically similar in multiple departments. And sometimes I've asked those guys, do you know what this one over there doing? They have no idea. So I'm hoping these will be more opportunities for people just to get together, have informal yet still structured way of getting to know others and learning about what someone else is doing. I mean, it's really critical. The siloing that goes on in a university, not just in our college, is real. We know that. Every time the deans have met with these various candidates, come in, VP for enrollment management right now. Before that, it was the assessment position, and there were others. Soon it'll be the replacement of Jeff Schmidt as CIO. They want to know about silo. Like, how do you work together? And if they don't say anything, we ask them, how are you going to help us work as a university across, right? But that siloing goes on a lot in the colleges too, and ours as well. So I'm hoping that this will help us get through there, get over some of that siloing and work across what are now perceived, I guess, as boundaries. I won't say any more right now, but in the near future, CLA will establish a social media. And we have some small presence right now, very small, mostly on LinkedIn, I believe, but it'll be much more current, up to date, engaging. And Teresa and a group of students have worked on this extensively, so I don't want to say any more now. I'll give the details once we're there, just in case we get a little delayed unexpectedly. But that's something I hope you don't have to follow, but I think if you're interested, you will engage and or at least want to follow. I'm going to just mention a couple of other updates on the building. If you've walked around the last week or couple days, if you've walked near the anthropology lab, you will notice this something that I've talked about before. There's this corridor with blank walls. There are lots of those in this building. And so working with Teresa, we are transforming that into sort of a more friendly space. Right now, you'll see stenciling on the wall that was out this morning when I walked over there. And we're going to have photos of students, is that right? Yeah, of students in the building. We want it not to be just blank walls. We're going to be doing much more of this in that way. We're putting up monitors, modifying spaces, because we are back, right? Regardless of what happens with our masks, we are back. And there are opportunities to make the building a little bit more welcoming and make people feel like it's their own. Another example of that is the Dean's conference room. If you've been in there since I arrived, the walls look like this, right? There's nothing on it. So I've worked with Teresa to put up something on the walls, and Paula, and she helped as well. And so they're not mounted yet, but they're in the room. We have photos of the building. Again, the CLA space, it is the Dean's conference room, but it's more than that. I want that to be an inclusive space so that people feel comfortable when they go in there and just think, well, it's some kind of maybe sacred space we really should be careful about. No, it's our space, okay? And I think that's really important. I want to say a few things about something else I've been working on. It's not a physical thing so much yet, but Frances, I think everyone knows Frances Washburn from the advancement office, and she's assigned to the college. So we've worked closely for the last year and a half since I've been here. We're working on creating a CLA advisory council. Some of the other colleges have those already. But the advisory council is something, the way we envision it, something that's active. So it will include mostly alumni, maybe an occasional member will be just a friend, and that doesn't mean just that they won't also be alumni, because we have supporters who aren't alumni. And we'll meet a couple of times a year, and it won't be for just social. There's always going to be a social element, but it will be to work on specific, projects, topics that I need some guidance on. Primarily at the beginning, it will be about career paths for our students. It'll be about internship opportunities. And for a lot of our majors, that's critical because there isn't a clear, if you're a philosophy major, or if you're a history major, even a political science major, it's not always clear what comes after college. We see those like question marks on parents' face, especially during admission events. Students, when they're 17, 18, they might think, oh, I just love history, I've got to do it, right? Or I want to do philosophy. But they're not necessarily thinking, well, how is that going to translate into a job? That's almost the first thing parents are asking. What can you do with this? Or English. And so this group of people will help us with that and with other things. We've already identified, and I've talked to, and we've invited, I believe, 3 people onto the 3, maybe a little more. We're going to be inviting more. I meet with them not quite every week, but about every other week now. We're amping that up. And I'm looking for 3 general categories of people. First of all, I am looking for disciplinary diversity. Everyone cannot come from psychology, although you could provide all of the 12 people we want, Carrie, on this council because we have so many alumni. But we're looking for disciplinary. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. And we're also looking at categories in one's career. So certainly, we have a small group of alumni who graduated in the last, say, up to 15 years or so. They might have gotten a master's, but mostly probably their bachelor's degree. So they're still young enough to remember and be sort of current with their student experience. And students today will look at them not thinking, oh, that's that person who's my parents' age, right? Then at the other end will be people who maybe just retired, have been retired for a while, and aren't so active in their career, but might still be very important to us. Maybe they're still networked, they have more money. This is about fundraising as well, and certainly hopefully more wisdom to share. And then the biggest group will be the middle. And that means people who are aspiring in their career, well on their way to reaching their end goals, and who are very active, very networked, and have things to offer us.
That's the toughest group because they're already so busy.
That's the toughest group, right? That's the toughest group, but we're working on it. So I just wanted to let you know, the goal is to have it put together and have our first get together, social only, just get to know you by the end of the semester. So we're hoping we'll get there, and it seems like we will. The last thing I'll say here before I take your questions is good news. So we have a lot of good news coming in, but I'm going to do like I did last year, just put it together for our last meeting, town hall in the semester. Faculty successes, student successes tend to increase during the spring semester, so they're starting to come in, and that's great to see it. And I think we'll have many more. We have students who are in finalist stages for very important national competitions, so they're finalists, which is important. But hopefully by the end of the semester, many of them will actually, won those competitions or gotten into the category of, receiving whatever it is that they were trying to apply for. So that's quite a bit. I don't think it's all terribly new. I mean, there was a lot of news there about moving to R2. Now it's time for your questions.
I have one.
Sure.
So this is has some great ideas. It's long. I'd like to read it all, but the general idea includes thoughts about how to break down silos and provide opportunities for sharing across disciplines. So, well, I wonder if we could harness some simple technology like Google Docs, where all faculty who wish could list and describe their research so that we could find out what our colleagues in other departments are doing and potentially form connections and collaborations, annual collaboration. Perhaps there could also be a Towson website featuring cross-disciplinary collaborations to inspire all of us to think outside of our silo. There could be ways to highlight sources of funding or grants that would encourage collaboration of faculty and students from different disciplines, or for instance, funding for technology that bridges storytelling, maps, computer programming, and history. So those are a lot of great ideas. We want that volunteer to come forward.
Well,
But just kidding.
sure, we'll take them, but not now. I mean, we'll take it afterward. So those are great points. So when I came here, and met with Nancy Dufault for the first time, I asked her, so do you have a database of faculty and what they work at? No. I was a little surprised. I thought, well, certainly that should exist by now here. It doesn't, as far as I know. The provost office at the university level is working on that. And it may be even this semester that they make an announcement that asks for people information. We need something like that in the college. I mean, if the provost office is going to do it and it's adequate, we can just segment out the colleges. We don't need to repeat it. But we don't have that. We absolutely need that. And so we'll work on it. I think we have all the technology we need. It's just a matter of putting it together.
We're talking about a summer project with students that might be able to, and this is a really good organizational structure. So perhaps we can talk about it at that.
And I have to say that, a lot of things that we've been wanting to do the last year and a half have been really put on the back burner because of COVID and all of the usualness surrounding it. There have been a lot of student emergencies, a lot of faculty emergencies. Some of you are well aware of that, and they become all consuming when they happen. You have no idea, if you've been involved, you don't know when they're going to hit. Something hit last late Saturday evening, president's office, involved our college. I was on it Sunday morning when I found out, and it's taken up a good portion of my week. And something else in our college emerged, they're faculty related, on Monday. And it's, we can't really say, oh, well, we'll just wait till the next week. Now, too many people are involved, including students. It's not as much an excuse, but I will say that as the situation becomes more normal, I think we'll see less. I'm hoping we'll see less of that. But it's really hard to know. The website. Not the website, but your faculty web pages, because this comes to mind when I heard that question. So I didn't know anyone when I came in. I often go to faculty web pages just to find out, like, who am I going to be talking to? Who's going to be in this meeting? Who's on my committee? It's very uneven. You know it, right? And that's something we've been talking about for the last year and a half. And again, we may engage students on this. How uneven is it? I like to know, like, who's coming to my meeting, and because we have the opportunity to put our photos on the web. What I quickly discovered is most of these photos are old. So we all age. Sometimes people came to meetings by Zoom, and I didn't even know it was the same person. And that's no criticism of anyone. The photo, though, needs to be updated periodically. But I'm surprised how many photos just happen. I don't think that's good for outsiders either, who are doing the same thing. We're much more visual culture than we were even 10 years ago. That may seem minor to you. What's not minor is the information on this photo. It's not consistent in the college. Often it's not updated. Occasionally a faculty member will actually die, a retired one, and they're still on our webpage. So what we're going to hopefully do the next 6 months and then beyond is be able to update those, and then really hold the departments responsible for keeping them. You can't have group photos of a department and 3 people have gone to other universities. Not right. It's just not right. And at my previous university, when that happened, and one of those faculty members saw it, they would say, "Take my photo off. I don't belong there anymore." And it's uncomfortable for me in my new place. You have to figure out the process, not the process much, but a protocol for keeping up to date. Are there any other questions?
Not right now, unless you see some trees.
Awesome.
Yeah, my question is about the student collaborative space. So you mentioned it's accessible by faculty swipe card. So is there a way to reserve this and how's it gonna logistically
That
work?
was in my notes and just wasn't reading. Yes, so 25 live is the way students will themselves reserve it. I would, Teresa, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would think if, say, we have a group of 5 students, only one needs to
Only one. And
Okay,
so the way
but
that
they
UCS has it, because what will happen is if all 5 of them reserve it, I'll get 5. And then I'll reach out and say, hey, are you the same people? And then, first come, first serve. So all it takes is one. And normally what you guys have, and when you guys do group projects, one of them becomes the leader. And then they just assign, hey, assign, register, for this room. And they all come to me. And basically it is just an automatic approved. As far as access, what they would do, and I'm working with Events and Conference Services to get a swipe card, a generic swipe card in their key watcher system. And so what will happen is the students don't even have to come to us, so they can, which is why I put all of our ID cards in there. But they could just go right down to the University Union, swipe their normal ID, get that key card, and a lot of times they work so late at night because some of their companions are working. And so at 8 o'clock at night, when we're gone, they just go get that swipe card, go in there, and then return the swipe card, and we don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so they get a special swipe card to go in on that day, that time, and then they return it.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
And we will, the loophole is they actually can have food in that room. Don't let them have a party, but I understand. Because all our spaces have that, but yes, that is a room that actually has that loophole that they can have food in there because
Okay.
again, a lot of times what they're doing,
Yeah.
they really do need to eat. And
Yeah.
so we did that.
And what's the capacity of the room?
10.
10.
There are 10 tables and chairs. The chairs can fold up and the tables can fold up. And so if you go past it, you'll see one table and one chair that's folded so that if they need to expand, they can get tables and chairs out of the room to make more space.
Got it.
It's not for individual use, so if a student needs to use a private space, that's not the space for them. And we see it, we'll stop, we'll talk. The two, it's a large enough room to take one about 10. I don't know if anyone works in such large groups, but not one. I should tell you also that you may be aware that the library is undergoing extensive renovation and build outs. And so there's less room for students to actually sit there and work. So each of the colleges have been asked to open up space or at least identify what space students can use. You may see an increase of that kind of student in our building. I was asked, can they use our collaborative space? I haven't answered yet. My initial, I'll discuss it with Teresa. I'm kind of mixed on that. I think our college has so many students. I don't start sharing like that because then our students may want to use it and not be able to. I don't want them going over another building because we've let other students not have priority.
I was wondering if you have heard any news about what the CLA Diversity Council might be working on.
Sure. Is anyone here by Zoom? Like, is Sandra here, Lara?
I did see her.
But maybe we can't let them talk how this works. I can give you an update, and then Sandra, if you want to add in the, what is it, in the chat box?
She's gone.
Okay. So the College's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, when I first got here, we were really in emergency COVID mode. And I didn't, of course, know how any of these committees work. So I would say last year, the committee, even though it has strategic goals from, I think, 2019, it talked about diversity-related issues, but I have to emphasize talk. It also,
Dr. Boris here. Do you want her to talk?
she can talk after me, yeah, definitely, that'd be great. And so this year, we're in less of a crisis mode. And what the committee, and a slightly different membership this year, and a different chair, but what the committee has been focusing on this year is to try to come up with some actions, right? Not just talk in the committee, but actions. Talking about diversity and inclusion can happen anywhere. You don't need a committee for that. We need to go back to our strategic plan, and many people don't even know that it exists, and we need to see which parts of it we want to engage. Iona Johnson, who is the the new assistant provost for, I think, diversity and inclusion, that's her title. She and Patricia Bradley are going to come to the committee and help us think through a few of, like, what can we do next? Sandra Lara is the chair of that committee, and I decided that we're going to follow the CLA Council's practice, I guess, longstanding practice, and I'm going to meet with her once a month to plan the next month's agenda. That may sound like a small matter. It's not. I mean, we need to start with organization and strategic thinking and strategic action. And so we're changing that up. Sandra and I met the first time last week. And yesterday, not last week, yesterday. And so we have a couple of action items for the next meeting. We have a group of very well-intentioned people, very sincere people. We need to engage them. They're very talented, and we haven't really done that since they came here. I don't know about before. I will take this opportunity to tell you, because your representatives from the departments are chosen within your departments. There are some deficits on this committee, and I think there are deficits we need to figure out how to change. There's not a single man on that committee. To me, something terribly wrong about that. And I'm not the only one who might think that. The departments have to figure out how to incentivize men to participate. It's not a women's issue, it's everyone's issue. And last year there might have been one man, I think he runs back. Yes. It's not it. And to me, that's a reflection of, I don't know what, but it's a reflection of things in our college that we cannot figure out in our departments. You've got to have at least some men go on to that committee. Another thing is we don't have what we might call an inclusive committee. We all seem to look pretty much alike. There's something wrong with that too. I'm not saying that if you're from an underrepresented category, that's your interest. It's not necessarily. I know that. But isn't it possible for a college our size to have some underrepresented population? We do have one member on the committee. But is that really enough? I don't know. I mean, the committee talked about this year. Not yet last year, I don't believe, because I think we have one other man on the committee. But it's pretty startling. That's what we're up to. But Hannah, what would you say?
It's okay, you did a good job. We were talking about making the diversity and inclusion committee a lot more diverse, but I just want to say that we're working really hard in this committee, and we're a group of extremely committed faculty and want to do a whole lot. So we have now a representative and undergraduate. We added students to the committee. We have an undergraduate student, and we will have a graduate student hopefully in a month or so. We're talking about action and activities. The very first thing that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is partnering with is a upcoming symposium on Holocaust, on teaching the Holocaust in the age of disinformation. And I want to take this opportunity to invite everybody to participate. This is coming up in February 23rd. And soon, I think next week, there will be an article at Towson, and the link will be attached, and everybody can still join us. I think it will be a wonderful opportunity to think about the age of disinformation, to think about Holocaust education, to think about the Holocaust as maybe a case study for other intolerance, hatred, and issues that we're experiencing right now. So yeah, other than that, Sandra is working extremely hard as the chair of the committee. And I think during the spring, you will hear a lot more from the committee. So thank you.
Thank you. That was great. I should tell you that I'm also expecting our college council and the committees, I don't mean PTRM or curriculum, but in some sense them too, especially curriculum, not PTRM. I'm expecting them to take a much more active role in what goes on in college. So one of the things Sandra and I talked about yesterday is, could the committee come up with guidelines for a variety of things? But one of them is teaching on a sensitive topic. We all know that there are lots of sensitive topics that get into the newspapers and the headlines. Sometimes it gets tenured faculty fired. But we need to provide some kind of guidelines, not telling people this is exactly what you should do. But before we get to that point, we need to have some conversations. So the committee has also talked about having some focus groups in the college. Probably won't happen until the fall on specific topics. And I think that would be helpful. Last question, because then we're out of time. Yes. Todd.
Very quick. When going to R2, we had to go to 9-month contract, and I've never understood what that even means.
Okay, what part do you want me to talk?
What's it doing 10-month and a 9-month contract, brother? Like, it just seems like it's an accounting thing. As a practical matter, does it
There's
change
an accounting-
anything?
There's an accounting aspect. So the way the provost has explained this is that the people who are in grants will make the biggest difference. To incentivize people to write those grants. What's the difference? You will go from receiving 1 month's salary, you could write that into the grant, or 2 months' salary. That's a big difference for everybody. That is what I said. There are other pieces. I know at the last town hall question was asked. I don't know that the answer was given because I'll have to follow up with the provost, but how does this impact other things in our lives that don't have to do with our actual teaching research? For example, accumulation of time toward some retirement benefits and so forth. I don't think the provost responded. I'm sure it's just not, she forgot, okay? But I will follow up on that and get an answer. I don't know if that helps.
That's fine.
All right, we're out of time. If you have other questions, and I should tell you, some questions that were submitted to the anonymous link, I will answer in docs. They either we didn't quite fit, or they're not the kind of thing that would be for this small amount of time we have together, but they're important, so I'll put them in the docs. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.